Well, he should live wherever he feels the most comfortable, where it gives him the best capability to manage his players.
I think I can draw similarities with your situation when you coach South Korea national team.
Then you want to deliver the results. We went in the semifinals of the Asian Cup at the end of the day. We had a great run there. Will I make everybody happy in the way I do it?
We have together in today's call media from across the APAC region, from Korea, from Japan, from Indonesia, from India, and we'll basically have a roundtable. I will be moderating the roundtable, and I'll just give the opportunity for the various media to ask you a series of questions for the upcoming The Klassiker.
Hello again. Yes. So I have a question about national team's head coach where should live, because for example last year the Japanese national team's head coach Moriyasu want to move in Europe because lots of player plays in Europe. Do you think Japanese national coach where should live?
Well, he should live wherever he feels the most comfortable, where it gives him the best capability to manage his players. Similar to my experience, with South Korea, is wherever the players are, and most of the players, your Japanese national team players, are in Europe, right?
Yes.
And obviously, you have a very modern federation that said, we also build an office in Europe. You have an office in Düsseldorf, as far as I understand, and I often actually had a discussion with the Korean Federation about also putting an office in from the Korean Federation in Europe somewhere to look after the players that play in Europe, because when you develop obviously a national team, you want your national team players to play in the best leagues in the world. This is your goal, because then they are more competitive and better prepared when a World Cup comes along, or a big competition, like in your case and in Korea's case, it's the Asian Cup. Because they have so much international experience that they bring them back into the national team. So a lot of coaches, that coach national teams, if you look at, for example, Mauricio Pochettino now with the United States, most of the time he's in Europe. So they choose the different places wherever, their players are based, and that's why, this discussion is obviously a lot depending on from where you look at the national team coach, because when you live in Tokyo, or, in my experience with the Korean Federation, when they live in Seoul or, in Ulsan or wherever they live, then they want you there, but they don't necessarily think about, okay, where are actually his players? But for a national team coach, the most important people are the players. So I was traveling a lot. I was going a lot to Europe to watch them play and to say hello to their coaches, to make relationships with their clubs, which the Japanese Federation does a wonderful job in doing that. So then I spent not enough time for some media people, in Korea, and they got angry at me and all that stuff. But you know how this goes. And nowadays, in the modern world, with having this conversation that we have right now via Zoom or Microsoft Teams, or, all these kind of video capabilities that you connect, or with, you have all these, things on your applications on your phone. You can connect with anybody in a split second, no matter where you are, but the national team job is very different, obviously, to a club coach. Because the club coach has to live wherever the club is. There's no doubt about it. But for a national team coach, I think, you can be anywhere in the world and get the job done as long as you have a very, very good communication line to your players.
Hello, Jürgen. Since my colleague started the session with the question around national team, coincidentally, as you may be aware, my national team coach, Patrick Kluivert, Indonesia national team, and he is currently under a lot of pressure after our national team failed to qualify for the World Cup. I think I can draw similarities with your situation when you coach South Korea national team. What I want to ask is, how did you deal with the kind of pressure and the kind of expectation, especially when you coach foreign national teams, you sort of carrying the weight of a nation and a lot of expectation, either from the fans, from the public, or even the federation.
Well, I think, when you coach a national team, whatever country that is around the world, first and foremost, it's not about pressure and it's not about the expectations. It's about that you would like to hopefully do the best job that you can do for this specific country. It's a huge honor to be a national team coach of any team around the world. So, I always had the philosophy, I go there, I do the best I can do, and hopefully it's going to be successful, and hopefully I make the people happy. But at the end of the day, you will not make everybody happy, no matter where you go. You can ask Carlo Ancelotti if he makes everybody happy in Brazil or, before that in Real Madrid, and he will say, no, not every day I make everybody happy. Yeah. So you have to follow your own way of doing it. You're trying to give your best, and hopefully then the results, will prove it your way. And I think that's the most important time. You build relationships, during that time with your players, and most importantly, with your federation, with the people, the media, the fans. And it's just, I saw it always as an amazing opportunity. And no matter where I go, even today in the world, I meet different people, different approaches. I have to learn to accept them the way they are. And when I had the opportunity to coach Korea for that 1 year, it's been a fantastic, absolute fantastic experience. And I don't want to miss one moment of it. Then you want to deliver the results. We went in the semifinals of the Asian Cup at the end of the day. We had a great run there. Will I make everybody happy in the way I do it? Probably not, but you do it the best way you can do it. Yeah, and then people can make up their judgment and can make up their opinion. And if it's the media, if it's the fans, but it's just wonderful experiences, and I'm very, very thankful for that.
What does the Bundesliga need to do to grow its global presence and reach a wider international audience?
Oh, that's a good question, but not for me, because obviously it's the decision makers of the Bundesliga that you need to ask about that. I see myself more like, from the outside perspective as a fan, and I think when you talk about that topic, which is a hot topic now to be talked about, because, you have leagues that kind of exploit themselves globally. They go and maybe trying to organize games outside of their own countries. Like you see that, but you see that also in other sports, like, for example, American football, they go now travel to Europe or travel maybe to Australia to play a game and do things like that to promote their leagues, to promote their sport. So when you, I think, talk about this topic about how to brand a league and how to kind of brand your own club and make it bigger as it is already, then those are the things that come up in the mind now in order to kind of get more presence in your country. Then the best way to do that is go there and play games. Show up yourself and connect with people, connect with the fans. This is always a hot topic, I guess, for the teams around the world in what they're doing, in order to grow their fan base, in order to grow their businesses at the end of the day. But obviously you have to kind of discuss that, person by person, club by club. And it's difficult to say in general, what they should do. But it's a fun topic, obviously, for us football fans to talk about.
This is very, very emotional question for you. And yesterday we won Brazil 3-2. Well, our striker scored the third goal. His name is Ueda. Ueda played in Feyenoord. In this month, Ueda has changed jersey number from 9 to 18. The reason he has changed the number is for you, because you. When he was a child, his father taught me how can play. Then his father loved you very much. That's why Japanese striker Ueda changed his number. So how do you think? And could you advise for him? What should center forward do to win the game?
Okay, I did not know about this story, so that really honors me. Yeah. That is a huge honor that, he chose the number 18, and had to do something with my past, from a long time ago. Yeah. For me, the number 18 came only along because, in my days, when you go into a tournament, you had to have a fixed number. And when I joined the national team as a young kid, as a young player, the number 9 and the number 11, the striker numbers, they were already taken. The number 9 was taken by Rudi Völler, and so I had to take a different number. And because you could have a number between 1 and 23, I said, okay, I take the double 9, 9 and 9, 18, but it's really an honor to hear that, that he chose the 18. But first of all, huge compliment for beating Brazil. So I think that is fantastic. It's a fantastic achievement because it obviously, when you have an opportunity to play teams like Brazil or Argentina, or I would say England or Germany, Spain, France, then, you want to do well. You want to do well, and you want to prove to the world that you can compete with these teams. And beating Brazil, I have to say, it's a very special day because it lifts your confidence level. It lifts obviously the mood. It lifts also the expectations, for next summer's World Cup in the United States, Mexico, and Canada. So this is big. Now going back to the number 18, and to this young striker, I think, do well in a foreign league, and that you can do well and score, in such big games already for your national team. So I can promise you I will follow him now with Feyenoord, and I will follow him now with the Japanese team, because now you made me very curious about him.
Yeah, first, who is most impressive striker in your generation? And tell us why he is most impressive in your point of view.
So the first one was about a striker question of my generation, correct?
In current generation.
The current generation.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, when you talk about strikers of the current generation, you go to the top leagues in the world, which is the Premier League, which is the Bundesliga, the Serie A, the La Liga, the French league, and then you can go to the big clubs and choose whatever your favorite striker is, and obviously everyone has a different opinion and has a different feel to it. But now obviously this conference call is about Bayern Munich playing Borussia Dortmund, and I think we should give them the priority to talk about their players, and I'm a big Harry Kane fan, not only now because he plays at Bayern Munich, where I played before, but also because he comes from Tottenham, where I also played before. So I have a little bit of a preference for Harry Kane. And then obviously on the other side of the field then is Guirassy, a player that makes a difference in many games, and or talents than you see on both sides with Olise and with Adeyemi. I mean, for us football fans, and if it's the media or the fans, it's always a wonderful discussion to have. Discussing different type of strikers. When we discuss the classical number 9 role, Guirassy is that more than a Harry Kane, because Harry Kane is more like a player that drops back to midfield, picks up some balls, then he kind of does assists to his teammates. Meanwhile, Guirassy is more a player that waits in the box and wants to score any second of the game. And then you have the discussion globally, about the number 9 role, where, an Erling Haaland is a typical number 9 for Pep Guardiola, but Pep Guardiola before that, he liked to have more the false number 9 when he started with Manchester City, or he coached at Bayern Munich before, or especially also at Barcelona, different teams. So you have all the different approaches, and you match then your different type of a striker into that approach of the coaches. I mean, you look back the last 20 years, and you obviously you have to talk about Cristiano Ronaldo, you have to talk about Messi. Are they real number 9s? No, they are not. Are they top goal scorers? Yes, they are. And so this is what we football people, we love. We love to talk about that. We love to discuss it. And you have probably your preference of a striker, and another person has a different preference. But this is what football makes so exciting. And this weekend we have a game with Bayern Munich against Dortmund, where different strikers will hit each other on the field. And we're all curious to see, okay, who makes a difference in that specific game now on the weekend.
So my question is going to first, how has football leadership evolved since your playing day? And what type of leaders do players respond to now?
The game moves forward. The game obviously improves, day by day. It's in every industry, in every business, your business and other businesses, you always want to go forward. You want to improve. You want to make things better. I think nowadays, compared to my playing days, more than 30 years ago, things became far more professional. The way, the environments that players now enjoy in the teams around the world, from a supporting system that they have is far more professional. If it's the medical department, their lifestyles, they look about, their sleep, their way of life, the food, nutrition. There's so many topics now surrounding top professional athletes that make you a better player. And this is wonderful to watch that, the environments of the clubs, the training facilities are far better than in the past. Their fields that they can train on nowadays are beautiful, so the game evolved, the game got more professional, and it's fun to watch, so the base for a professional football player nowadays, the foundation that they enjoy, that they can have, day in, day out is fantastic. The game is still, similar to, my days. Obviously a couple of rules changed, like the back pass rule, I think was a big change in the game, where the goalkeeper cannot pick it up with their hands anymore and run down the clock and do certain things. I think VAR changed the game a lot to the better. I'm absolutely a fan of VAR because in 99.9%, it's right. There will be always one thing maybe here and there to discuss and have a different opinion. But I think that part of technology kind of moving into the game has been fantastic. So things move along, and that's fun to watch. And now being a player today, it's definitely fun, enjoyable. But there are also some other parts where I'm glad that I played 30 years ago, because I didn't want to be part of social media every day. And nowadays as a player, so I'm glad that I don't have to have that experience.
Funny you talk about social media. How do you see the role in social media, especially to the mental health to the players and so on? Because these days it seems like you have to post something every day. You have to post either apologies when your team lose or so on. You have to post before the match, after the match. How do you think about that?
Yeah, I think, there are positives and negatives on that topic. I think for the players to express themselves through social media, it's a great opportunity. It's a great tool to connect to the fans and also to the media. If you want to kind of send out a message, want to express yourself, it's fine. But I think it can also cause you a lot of stress. It can cause you stress because maybe now the expectations is from the fans and the media that you post something every day, and that you kind of connect with the fan base far more intense than you did before. So that could create also like pressure, it could create, uncomfortable feeling, and then obviously you have the mechanism that no matter where you go, if you go to a restaurant or you go to a bar and you have some drinks, because the cell phone, everybody carries a cell phone, and boom, you are out there. When my days, I could have a drink or even two and nobody cared, because there was nobody with a phone and filming you and then putting you on social media and say, okay, this and this guy is in that pub, but yeah, there are the positives and the negatives, and it could cause stress for players, and that's something where I feel like my days were a lot more calm and relaxed in that topic.
So, what's the biggest thing a young striker needs to make it in the Bundesliga these days?
I mean, it's a fun topic, when you obviously have the topic of strikers, and my experience was just coming through the ranks and kind of climbing up the ladder as a player. A striker needs to have a lot of confidence. He needs to believe in himself, and obviously he has to enjoy the game, like everybody has to enjoy the game first and foremost. But you have to develop a mindset that you never give up and that you always move on to the next play. When I see strikers, especially young strikers, breaking into the game and they miss chances and they get kind of frustrated, they get kind of down on themselves, and then they start to doubt themselves. That's something that, I always tell young players and young strikers to never think about what you just did. Never think about the past or the missed chances that you had. You always only have to think about the next chance that will come along. And the beauty of football or sports in general is that there's always a next occasion coming up to prove your point. There's always the next game. So you have to develop a mindset and an approach and an attitude that you always think about the next move, the next opportunity, the next chance that comes in a game or in a training session. And this is very, very important. I think it's an important topic for all the athletes, that in no matter what sport, that you always leave the negative experiences that you go through. Now, for a striker, it's the missed chance that you just had. Just to leave it aside and just move always on to the next one, the next occasion. Because the beauty of a striker is that you might miss 10 chances in a game, but in the 92nd minute, you get another chance and you score. And that could be the winning goal. Right. And nobody will talk about the 10 missed chances that you had before, because everybody will only talk about the one that you put in the back of the net. And this is the beauty of a striker. So I always try to tell young strikers when they come through their development phase that never get angry about what you just missed. Always think about the next opportunity that comes up, and then you got to score.
I want to ask you to the next World Cup. The next World Cup is gonna 48 countries. So there's many Asian countries make their World Cup debut next summer, like Uzbekistan and Jordan. So what do you think they're competent, and which team is you most interested?
Well, I think, the next World Cup for all of us, will be the biggest World Cup ever, because you have 48 teams competing in Canada, Mexico, and the United States in next summer. So it will be an experience, for all of us football fans, or if it's the coaches, if it's the players, if it's the countries, in an extreme that never were there before. Then it's played in 3 different countries, which is very, very challenging. And the time period, you look at the next World Cup, will be the tournament itself 5.5 weeks, if you would make it theoretically into the final, right? So it's gonna be fascinating to see all the different nations from around the world. How can they adjust to the circumstances of this tournament? Obviously, when you discuss it now, as we football fans would say, who are the favorites? You will always say it's maybe South America, it's Argentina, it's Brazil, and the European powerhouses, England, France, Spain, Portugal, Germany, and so forth. But I think it will be a tournament with a lot of surprises, because these teams that will now join in, there are some teams they never played before also in a World Cup, and they wanna create something very special. And I think, it could become a tournament where you see some kind of less favorite teams, surprising the big names. And that's what I'm looking forward to. And it's a little bit similar if you saw games from the Club World Cup, in the summer in America, where smaller teams suddenly beat the big names, and everybody thought, wow, how can this be happening? Because they're so big the favorites, but in a World Cup anything is possible. In these tournaments, anything is possible, and I think we're gonna see really surprises next summer in the World Cup, maybe from countries, that you never had, on your paper before. And and that's the beauty of the game.
We're nearing the last 5 minutes of today's roundtable, so I'll hand it over to Number Web now.
I have a question about football style. So in Japan, many football players and many football head coaches love style of Spanish football, like Tiki-Taka. But after the World Cup 2022, many head coaches or journalists in abroad told us Japanese strong point is pressing football. So that's why my question is, Japanese football should do Spanish style football or should choose pressing football? How do you think?
Yeah, I think it's a wonderful discussion to have. Because every country is trying to find its own identity, right? The identity of your country, also my experience, for example, in Korea is you build an identity based on the players that you have, and the players that you get then on the highest level are educated in a specific way because of the coaches that you have, your cultural elements that you have, and your preference of looking at the game globally. And I think that the Spain in the years 2008, 10, 12 left a huge mark to a lot of coaches around the world with tiki-taka football, with possession-based football. But also they had the players to do that because the players were educated in their academies, in their clubs, and the most famous academy is obviously La Masia in Barcelona. Mm-hmm. And that's where then a lot of coaches kind of took their ideas, took their approaches, and utilized it in their own countries or environments. What I found fascinating always about Japan certainly was that Japan found a way in the last 20, 25 years. So following the 2002 World Cup, in your own country alongside Korea, is that you realized, okay, we don't have the tallest players, so let's keep the ball on the ground. You did coaching education with experts like, for example, curve coaching. It's a very technical method of teaching the kids handle the ball. So you learned how to kind of handle, high pressure teams that get at you to play the ball out of pressure on the ground. You don't hit long balls. You don't hit high balls. You play your corner kicks on the ground, with short corners. And so now obviously it changed a little bit here and there. It's not every game is the same game, but you developed a philosophy based on your strengths, based on the way you educated the players and especially you educated the coaches. And I think this is fascinating to see. Now, I think, when you look at the top coaches around the world, and we always come back to the names like Carlo Ancelotti, who's now in Brazil, but Pep Guardiola, who proved his ways. Now it's nice to talk about Vincent Kompany with his approach at Bayern Munich, or even Niko Kovac now with Dortmund. But I think that all the coaches, we have one thing in common, is we try to build something special and an identity in that way through the quality of the players that are at our disposal, So if I have a specific type of a player, if I have a Harry Kane, I build a system that feeds Harry Kane. If I have counter-attack players, if I have a Cristiano Ronaldo, if I have a Lionel Messi, I build it differently to the strengths of Cristiano Ronaldo and Messi. And this is the beauty. And so when you watch in the teams, if you watch Korea, you watch Japan, you watch, these nations, you analyze your players and you want to build then that team around these qualities of the players. And I will be very curious, in summer when you come to the United States, with Japan, how it evolved then with the Japanese national team. The same, I'm curious, obviously, about the Korean team coming to America. if it has the identity of their own players.
Thank you very much, Jürgen. And
Welcome.
with that, we've come to the end of today's roundtable. Thank you, Jürgen, for all your comprehensive answers, talking about the Klassiker, the upcoming World Cup, as well as, very important topic like mental health and preparation in football. I'm sure the media have had a really good time, obviously having all their questions answered as well.